Hey, what's up everybody? It's J-Rock right here. Today I'm gonna be hitting you with a comic review. So if you like that type of content, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. You might like some of the upcoming videos I have planned. Okay, so what are we gonna be reviewing? We're gonna be reviewing New Mutants. Now this is a title that's a spin-off series to the popular X-Men. Basically, this series is the X-Men is your superhero team, the grown-ups, people in their 20s, and New Mutants are the teenagers coming along that are just learning how to own their powers and so forth. Usually the guy that leads them is Professor X. He leads both teams. One's just the students. And a lot of these students will one day replace the X-Men once they get too old. They'll become teachers and the New Mutants will become X-Men. So that's kind of how this works, okay? So now that we got that out the way, there's many series. They get canceled, they renumber, they start over. So this one is New Mutants, the series from 2003. This was written by NUNZIO DeFilliPis and Christian Ward. Now this series ran 13 issues. It was not very well received because when you think X-Men and you think superheroes, you think a lot of big action scenes and fights and so forth. This was kind of like a reboot. It's a great place to start if you're barely starting into New Mutants and you don't want to start all the way back in the 80s. And this kind of lays the foundation. It sets up a lot of things for the future. So that's why this is not very action heavy. This series is 13 issues where they're basically introducing you to all these new students coming into the school, what their names are, what their backstories are, their superpowers, their home life, why they're coming to school, all that good stuff. And it's reintroducing you to a lot of the old New Mutants, to the original New Mutants, which some of them became X-Men and some of them are now X-Men at this current time, being 2003. So you bring all those characters back and you're reintroduced to them for people that are just jumping on the book for the first time and are not familiar with them. So like I said, great jumping on point. These writers do a great job introducing you to every character, letting you know about their lives so you don't have to go back 40 years and read from the beginning, right? There is a little bit of action, which in my opinion makes it all the more meaningful when action does happen, because it doesn't happen that often. Most of this book is character development, get to know the characters and get to form some type of attachment to them. So the basis of this story, it's basically about a kid that's on the wrong path and he's a racist and so forth. He hates mutants, and then he finds out he is a mutant. So, we've seen this story told before where someone has these beliefs because of the crowd he's running with, and then he gets exposed to the real world and outside of his little group, and they kind of grow out of that. So that's kind of what this story is about. We see a coming of age story, if you will. We've seen that done a million times, but it's done very well here, and that you gotta catch up on. These characters come and go, so they don't have 700 episodes or issues, right? They have maybe 20, 30 issues. So if you like this, you could go forward or you could go back and see where it started. I would recommend you could just keep going forward, and they do a lot of touching back on the past. So a lot of times they'll reference old stuff that happened, and they'll have like a page or a panel where they're explaining previous things. So you don't really have to go back to the other book. Now, so if you like how this story sounds so far, and you got something of value out of this video, hopefully you can do me a favor and hit that like button. It really does help out the channel. And you don't want to be spoiled, you might want to log off right now. Go ahead and check that book out for yourself, because now we're going to get a little bit into the story, and I'm going to introduce each character to you and kind of give you my thoughts on what I think about this story itself. We start off with this character named Wind Dancer. That's her superhero name. Now when it starts off, her mom is like protesting or something, and this riot breaks out with the police and the protesters and so forth. She gets killed. So now she's a lonely child, kind of like an orphan. They look for the dad. Turns out he's in the United States because she's living in another country. She's of Hispanic descent. So she goes to the United States, does not know English. So she's sent to live off with the father. Doesn't know English. The father tells her, you gotta start learning English. He's very career driven, right? So he's all about himself. He's working on his own life. Doesn't have time for children. So he, needless to say, is kind of a nuisance for him. He didn't want to be raising a child at this point in his life. Tells her, you gotta learn English, you gotta study, you gotta be smart, because how successful you are in life reflects upon me, and if you're a screw up, that reflects poorly upon me as well. So he's very strict. She's basically more raised by the butler than she is by the father, and she's looking for more of a friend at this point than like a boss figure. So, you know, she has an accent, she can't speak very well, she's barely learning the language. She's getting bullied in school. Then I think one of the students finds out she's a mutant, so it's all bad. Now they're bullying her even more. So clearly, you know, this is a take on, you know, maybe kids when they come from another country, they're barely learning English, and maybe these things could happen to them. So she's struggling with this, and she acts out. And being a mutant with superpowers, she acts out. She has a little hissy fit, if you will, and she totally destroys everything in the lunch area. So once this happens, you know, the cops show up, and they take her to jail, call the dad. Luckily, the dad is somebody important, so he gets her out of there. But before he does so, um, we have this big surprise. Dani Moonstar. She's one of the OG New Mutants from back in the original series in the 80s. She shows up. She's now grown up, and she says, "What's wrong?" She found out about this case with a young mutant. You know, the typical, it's a typical trope in X-Men when you see a young mutant using his powers for the first time, or her powers for the first time. One of the older X-Men shows up, finds out what happened, what are their powers, try to recruit them to the school to teach them how to own their powers, how to use them, how to be responsible, not abuse of their powers they have, before somebody else gets in contact with them or a hold of them and tries to take advantage of them, to have them do their bidding for them for whatever their cause might be, right? So that's why the X-Men are always, you know, alert and where a mutant activity takes place, so they could show up, you know, help them out of whatever jam they're on, and, you know, bring them in a school where they're accepted, because they don't belong in normal schools. They belong in schools where other people like them, because they're gonna need special classes according to whatever abilities they have, because they don't gotta just learn to read and write and so forth. They're, you know how we have PE as regular kids, they kind of have a PE but with their superpowers to kind of train how to use their abilities. The next issue, we get introduced to another kid, another new mutant in the class. Once she gets introduced to the school and so forth, they kind of teach you the rundown how the school works and so forth. Then we get introduced on issue 2 to a new character that's kind of a loner in the school because of the superpower she has. She tries not to get too close to people. I don't want to give everything away. Power she has, just by being close to someone, it can affect them, right? So she stays away. She's kind of a loner. And this character that we were introduced to in issue 1, Sophia, aka Wind Dancer, is gonna be her new roommate. You know, they're telling her you're gonna have a new roommate now, because this school is kind of like a college. You know, they all got dorms, everybody has a roommate. It's more of a college environment, but a lot of these students are of high school ages. You know, they're 14, 15, 16. Once they're 23, 24, the characters that would be of college age are already out on the field working as choose like the superhero route, or to be teachers in the school, or counselors, etc. We rinse and repeat. We keep getting new characters every issue. They dedicate one issue to one new character each time. Or actually to two new characters, because there always has to be a contrast. Like issue 1 was the Hispanic girl and Dani Moonstar, who's of Indian descent. So that's the first issue. In each issue, you get introduced to two characters, see how they interact with each other, how the dialogue bounces off each other, and so forth, so that you can have an idea of how the characters respond to certain situations, how each character responds differently, because they all have different personalities. Now, these characters, since you dedicate a full issue to each one, you get a really good idea of, they're really fleshed out, basically. They're not one-dimensional, one-note characters. They have depth to them, and you really get a feel for their personalities, which is always good. You don't want a character that just has one catchphrase and it's always like a sting. You know, here this is much more story-driven than it is action. I mean, this is much more character-driven than it is story-driven, in my opinion, because story-wise, if you read X-Men, it's a lot of the same. You introduce new characters, they come to the school and so forth. You see a lot. You see, this has been told before, but the characters themselves, their personalities are always different. No two characters have the same exact personality. Okay, so all in all, this book, I thought it was pretty solid character development. Now the main two characters towards the end is, you have this one character that's a racist towards mutants, like I said. His name is, I believe, Joshua, aka Elixir. He has the power of healing people. and he was running with this crowd, right? Now the leader of this group, they were called the Reavers. The leader there is Pierce. His name is Pierce. He came out in the Logan movie, I believe. But in that movie, he's with the no, yeah, he's also with the Reavers in that movie. You know, where they're a gang of people that are, some are mutants, but a lot of them are like have mechanical parts to them, like mechanical arm, mechanical leg, or whatever. So they're basically they're kind of like a punk rocker Nazi group in the comics. In the movie, they made them a little different because they evolve over time, but that's how they started. Even in this book, they're more of a, just a regular Nazi group, but they're not like skinheads, or they don't have mohawks. They listen to heavy metal. They don't have any of that. That was kind of how they started off in the 80s. Here, they're more of just regular plain. It's like a take on a racist group, but they're called the Reavers, and they kind of are against mutants. Okay, so that Pierce is the, I think his name is Donald Pierce. He's the main villain in this story, but he doesn't show up too much because it's much more, like I said, about the characters themselves, fleshing them out. And towards the end of this book, you start getting some more of the old New Mutants showing up, and they're bringing the new group along, and the old group are basically now the new X-Men, right? And the new group, the students, are the new mutants, and then so goes the cycle. So this is just set up for the following book, which the following book, these X-Men books can get tricky, because to read volume 2 of this, you think it'd be New Mutants volume 2, right? But no, the volume 2 is now called New X-Men, which I feel like maybe it should have just been called New X-Men all along. They should always be X-Men and New X-Men, not X-Men and New Mutants. You know, let me know what you guys think about that in the comments down below. Don't you think it's better if they were just always called New X-Men? That way you know they're connected, the two series, and you're not as confused. That's just my take on that. But anyways, it's the new book you would follow after this is called New X-Men. You would continue there. So we'll continue there on the next review. As I read it, then I'll review it. If you read this before, let me know what you thought about it, because I know it wasn't very popular. A lot of people didn't like it because they lacked an action. But I feel like you had to go through these first 12 issues to introduce the new characters and let you know who they are. Because if you just threw them in there and they're fighting criminals already, they would become very watered down, very one-dimensional. So yeah, guys, let me know in the comment section, like I said, and stay tuned for the continuation to this. Alright, that's all I got for you guys today, and I'll check you guys out next time.